use it.
This is a Fox News alert. The North Korean regime appears to be moving toward a nuclear test on Saturday. That would be defying warnings, explicit ones from the Trump administration, of a possible preemptive strike if they attempt to execute the test. Good evening. Welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Saturday is the birthday of Kim Il-sung. He is the founder of North Korea and an object of religious veneration. And if any day is likely to see some explosions, it is that one. It's already Saturday morning on the Korean Peninsula, so the test or a U.S. strike could conceivably come at any time. North Korea's military has issued a statement warning it would annihilate American troops in South Korea, quote, within minutes if it is attacked. It's hard to find anyone who really knows what's going on there inside the Hermit Kingdom, but Michael Malice is a top contender, if anyone is. He wrote a biography of Kim Jong-il, Kim Un-'s father, and the country's previous dictator. Michael Malice joins us tonight. Michael, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
So, from a non-expert point of view, this looks ominous, almost scary. Is it? Do we have reason to be really concerned?
We have absolute reason to be concerned. North Korea has been preparing for 70 years with the idea that the U.S. imperialists, how they refer to us, are going to come back and finish the job that we started in the Korean War. So this is part of their mythology. Children have to wait outside the library at night waiting for U.S. spies. So this is something they've been prepping for decades.
So we know that they are paranoid and warlike and they have an enormous military. What is their aim? What do they want?
The regime wants to hold on to government and up to 10% of the population starved. So when you look at Libya, if you look at Iraq, if you look at Slobodan Milosevic and Romania, when these regimes go down, the people at the top are personally killed. So Kim Jong-un has a very vested interest in maintaining his hold on power, even if he doesn't believe in the system anymore.
So and he does seem evil, but in some ways a rational actor. He's consolidated power as a very young man. Doesn't that suggest restraint? I mean, an attack on South Korea wouldn't help him, would it, or would it?
Well, it absolutely would not help him but at the same time, if his back's against the wall, he's going to go down fighting. His father, Kim Jong-il, got the supreme commander role, according to the mythology, because Kim Il-sung, the great leader, the founder, said, what do we do if we lose? And Kim Jong-il said, if we lose, we will destroy the world. And Kim Il-sung said, spoken like a true supreme commander. So part of their mythology is you have to live with the spirit of the bullet and the bomb and lay down your life on behalf of the leader. So these people are not going down without a fight. The Pyongyang metro is the deepest metro in the world because it's a bunker in case of a nuclear strike. A huge percentage of their infrastructure is subterranean. They have been waiting for years, and they're taught it in schools that we're going to come back and kill them all.
How do you think they'll react to feeling cornered, to the ultimatum laid down by the Trump administration?
I'm absolutely terrified because you remember President Trump during the campaign said, if someone hits you, you got to hit him back harder, and that's their exact mentality, and they have no allegiance to anyone. The scariest part is there are 100 to 200,000 people in concentration camps in North Korea right now. You can see the camps on Google Earth, and the people in these camps are told explicitly and constantly, if the U.S. imperialists invade, we will kill you all and burn these camps down. So if there's an attack, we might be looking at genocide within one day.
So we have a lot of American troops, of course, in South Korea, and the North Korean government has said, as we said in the intro, they will be killed immediately. Is that a plausible threat? Could they do that?
Absolutely. Seoul is the capital of South Korea.
Of course.
We divided the Koreas right directly north of Seoul after World War II. So for them to strike Seoul, which is 10 million people, with a nuclear weapon would be absolutely easy to do. And Kim Jong-il boasted that he turned North Korea into a hedgehog with spines in every direction by which he meant missiles, and that a hedgehog can't be attacked by any larger animal. So this has been their idea for a very long time.
So the assumption, I think, of a lot of people in Washington is that China will prevent this from happening, that North Korea is a client state and it's not in the Chinese interest to allow this to happen. Is that true? Do they have control over the North Korean government?
No, China has been leaning on them and trying to get them to calm down for a very long time. And North Korea revels in the fact that they're a country the size of Pennsylvania, and they basically give the finger to China, Russia, Japan, the U.S. imperialists, and South Korea. So China can't really control them either. The only thing they've done is in the 70s, when they built a 70-story statue of Kim Il-sung in Pyongyang and plated it in gold, China said, this isn't what communism is about, so they changed it to bronze. So Kim Jong-il said, the Chinese system won't work here. We're Korean. Our systems are for us. And they call themselves a shrimp among whales, by which they love the fact that they're small, scrappy guys taking on the big boys.
Yeah, and they're legitimately tough. I mean, there's kind of no doubt about that. So finally, what's the right call at this point? I mean, obviously, the West doesn't want to see a hydrogen bomb in the possession of the North Korean government. That's what they're moving toward, apparently. Right. How do you stop them from doing that without provoking a confrontation like this?
Anyone who says there's an easy, good answer here is not telling the truth. The Chinese don't want 24 million people who have never seen a computer, who don't speak Chinese, crossing the Tumen River and setting up camp in Manchuria. So it's a nightmare situation with no simple answer.
Is there any answer? How about a complex answer?
It's going to have to be some kind of Marshall Plan between China, Russia, Japan, South Korea, and us working together. And they're not going to relinquish their hold on power voluntarily.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
You didn't make me feel better, Michael, but I appreciate the information. That was really interesting.
Thanks, Tucker.
North Korea and ISIS are grabbing headlines, but a different group is currently the most likely to end your life in this country. It's a street gang called MS-13. It has 6,000 members. The government estimates that here in the U.S. It's active in almost every state and is growing rapidly. Just yesterday, they were suspected in a horrific quadruple murder on Long Island in New York. Question is, what's fueling their growth and what can we hope to do about it? Tim Clementi is a retired FBI special agent. He specialized in international counter-narcotics and counterterrorism operations, and he joins us on the set here in Washington. Tim, thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me,
So this is a threat that has received weirdly little publicity, and I wouldn't even speculate as the reason why, but a lot of people have died as the result of MS-13 activity. Give us a sense of the scope of this organization.
Well, the organization began in the 1980s in Los Angeles, primarily first as a stoner gang. It wasn't even involved in drug distribution, it was more drug use. And then it became very violent because their founders actually came from the rebellion in El Salvador. So they were part of the peasant guerrilla fighters, and so they were used to warfare. They brought that warfare to Los Angeles, and it's since spread out throughout the United States. Living here in the Washington, D.C. area, we see a terrible problem in Northern Virginia and throughout Maryland and D.C. proper, where it's really become almost the hub of MS activity in the United States. Los Angeles was the origination point, but now we see that this area of the United States, as well as Boston, Massachusetts, areas of New York and New Jersey, are being overrun. Anywhere there are communities from Central America especially settled, that's where these guys move in, disrupt the neighborhood, disrupt all the local immigrants that are trying to become part of the American fabric, and they're destroying that fabric.
Yeah, the normal people suffer first, always. What's the federal response been like?
The United States FBI first formed a task force, I believe about 2004, to deal with the problem. A little bit late to the party, but that task force has since done raids all over the United States. There have been hundreds of arrests, but as you said, 6,000 reputed members. I've actually heard the number closer to 8,000 to 10,000 throughout the United States. That was in a gang estimate in 2009. So these numbers are very fluid because we don't know who's a member. It's not like there's a registry we can go to and check that. And the problem is that traditionally MS-13 has been known by the tattoos, especially the facial tattoos, very proudly putting the MS label and the MS-13 all over their body. But now they're kind of shying away from that in some areas because they realize kind of stand out when you have the tattooed MS-13 across your forehead. And so now they're moving towards, let's not tat ourselves so badly so that we can maybe get away with some more crimes. That's an even scarier factor because if they hide as well as they do now, it'll be so much tougher for us to find them when they're
So the Salvadoran government is really worried about MS-13.
Very much so.
I think they've designated them a terror organization. I don't think the U.S. government has. Why and should we?
Absolutely we should, because when we look at what they do, there are some groups, you look at Hezbollah, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, those are terror groups, but they're also legitimate political entities associated with that.
Right.
So they have a legitimate purpose somewhere. It's not true for MS-13. MS-13 is kidnapping, rape, child prostitution, murder, murder for hire. Those are the things they export, and that's all they do. And so there's no legitimate group. Anybody that's associated with this MS-13 is involved in terrorism. And terrorism, by definition, is trying to change political attitudes and using force and the threat of violence to do that, and that's exactly what they do.
So if the Salvadoran government thinks that's the case, and they would know, then what's the hesitation on the part of our government to make that designation?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know why we don't look at the facts, look at it cold and detached from the fact that this isn't an immigrant group. We're not talking about people that are immigrating here to become part of the United States. These are people that are coming here to commit crimes or are already here and being recruited to commit crimes.
To what extent is it foreign controlled?
Well, most of their leaders have come from El Salvador, but since Guatemala, Honduras, and now within the United States. So those leaders, there have been stories in like 2007, 2009 where crimes were committed overseas in Mexico or in Central America, and they fled into the United States to hide. That's not a good sign.
Boy, it's been a pretty intense A-block tonight. Mr. Clementi, thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Up next, new scientific studies argue that babies are already racist when they're 6 months old, which is, of course, insane, but there was a study. Anyway, I'm going to talk to the lead researcher to find out how he reached that conclusion. Plus, in the final installment of our series on the opioid epidemic, we'll talk to an opioid addict about what it's like, the challenges of getting clean, and how doctors contributed to his addiction and the larger crisis. And of course, we'll continue monitoring the breaking news out of the Korean Peninsula. These are live pictures right now of Kim Il-sung's birthday celebrations underway in Pyongyang. They're expected to start a missile test there shortly. We'll monitor the news out of that region by the minute, so stay tuned. See that picture? It's a baby. Cute, isn't it? Well, we blurred the face to protect his identity because we've got bad news. You're looking at a bigot. According to a new pair of scientific papers, your baby is one too. Those studies say all babies are racist, even when they're just 6 months old. For real, it says that. Researchers at the University of Toronto in Canada found that when babies hear happy music played, they stare longer at the pictures of their own race, while sad music makes them linger on the pictures of other races. Dr. Kang Lee of the University of Toronto was the lead researcher for these studies, and he joins us now. Dr. Lee, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, pardon my skepticism, kind of hard to believe that babies are bigots. Are you sure?
I'm not saying babies are bigots. I'm just looking at whether or not the babies are already biased to associate certain kind of emotions with own race versus other race. One of the things we discovered, however, is that 3-month-olds are not. So they don't associate negative emotions with own race or other race individuals. And however, after about 6 months of life, the babies start to show some biases. So when we show them the music that is happy, they tend to look longer at own race individuals over other race individuals.
So they go bad at 6 months. Boy, it just seems so early. What's the punishment for that at 6 months?
Well, I don't think there's any punishment for it. I think the reason for this is actually because most of us who are born into monoracial families, we tend to see only the faces of our own race individuals. And because of this, we really have very limited experience with the other race individuals. So one of the things that when we develop, we tend to show novelty biases, that is, we feel uncomfortable with things that are new, unfamiliar. So because of this, and when they see other race individuals and they are not familiar with, they tend to associate some negative valences with them. So this is the beginning of it.
Now, I'm not a social scientist or a researcher, but it seems unlikely that you could measure the racial attitudes of a 3-month-old beyond like my diaper's dirty kind of thing, or I want some milk.
I wouldn't say, so the way to do it is to see what kind of things we associate with, or whether or not we tend to learn. The babies like to learn from own race individual or other race individual. For example, in the second study we did, we actually showed own race adults or other race adults teaching kids about what's going to come up. And in one condition, both of them are actually 100% correct. In this condition, babies don't care. Regardless of your own race or other race individuals, they learn from them. And when both of them are incorrect 100% of the time, and they don't want to learn from any of them. So babies are very, very smart. The critical question is when it's under uncertainty. That is, when both adults are 50% correct, what would the baby do? And we found that the babies would like to learn more from the own race individuals, treat them as if they are 100%, and then the other race individuals as if they are 100% incorrect. So these are the biases, but I don't think these are the bigotry or this kind of racism at play at this young age. I'm just saying that this is the basis. Then we may build up with our experience, and then they diverge when we look at the own race and other race individuals.
I mean, from a non-expert point of view, this suggests that these attitudes are not learned behavior, but a product of evolutionary biology. But, I guess you would know. As someone who covers politics, though, I'm pretty certain that your study is going to lead to new government programs and government control over babies. Do you think?
I hope not. I want to say two things. The one thing I said that we are not predisposed, biologically predisposed to be racially biased. So this is what our findings are suggesting. So it seems to be that basically our early experience, if it's very exclusive, then we tend to develop the early biases. So that's one thing. Another thing is, well, I think it depends on parents, right, and the educators, whether or not you want your kids to develop with biases. For example, you could actually introduce your kids, babies, to read storybooks that are depicting people from all over the world. And I think that would help your child not to see more individuals from different races, ethnicities, as well as expose them to different cultures. I think you make your babies more worldly. So in terms of government programs, I'm not quite sure. I think for parents, there's good message from these studies.
I mean, call me cynical, but I have the feeling that this is going to justify a whole new range of intrusions into people's family lives, where all of a sudden government regulators and do-gooders and people with guns are going to rearrange the family in the interest of promoting tolerance or whatever the justification
No. I think you get it totally wrong. The message of these studies are showing that the early experiences are very important. We know this from from many studies, right? So early experiences are very important.
Right.
The idea is you show your babies experiences, and the more experience they have, the better they're going to be. So different languages, different people from different races. I don't think the government has anything to do at this point, because this is early childhood. Actually, parents play a very good, important role here.
Well, obviously not good enough, because they're not doing whatever is required with a 3-month-old to keep them from developing the forbidden attitudes you describe.
Oh, I don't think so. I think parents know what's good for their kids. Right? Parents know that if you teach kids about different kind of people, storybooks about Chinese people, about African people, about American people, about Europeans, I think the more they know and the more they learn, and the more experience they have, and they become worldly. I think parents like their kids to be worldly, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just, I guess, again, having covered this stuff for many years, when you said, quote, at this point, I got a chill, because I realized that I'm going to read your study in a New York Times piece 10 years from now, sort of desegregating daycare or requiring parents to give certain kinds of picture books to their kids. I mean, there's just literally no question about it.
I hope people do not take the message from our study in this way. I mean, this would be like, I don't think reasonable people reading these studies and reading these findings say, hey, government, you come in and take my babies away. I don't think so. I think the whole idea is experience is important, and diversity of experience is very important for their kids' development.
All right, well, I definitely agree with that part of it. Dr. Kang, thanks a lot. Dr. Lee, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, lawmakers in North Carolina are considering a bill that would allow a comprehensive firearms safety course to be taught in high schools. There are tens of millions of gun owners in America, so it seems an optional safety course would at least be a reasonable idea, since accidental gun deaths do still kill thousands every year. Plus, the course would not actually involve ammunition or shooting. And yet many progressives in the state oppose the bill anyway, at least one on the grounds that, quote, there's enough violence already. That's right, like a magical totem, the gun inspires violence merely by learning about it. Next, a contractor in California is having his business targeted simply because he bid to build the federal government's border wall. He joins us next. We'll continue monitoring breaking news out of North Korea. You are looking live as we expect missile tests to begin there. It's an ominous moment. Keep in mind, it's already morning in North Korea. You can see missiles, tanks, and rockets as that country gears up for a huge rally in the center of the capital city, Pyongyang. We're staying with the story. Stay with us.
I'd never miss an early morning market, but with my back pain, I couldn't sleep or get up in time. Then, I found Aleve PM.
The only one to combine a safe sleep aid plus the 12-hour pain-relieving strength of Aleve.
And now, I'm back.
Aleve PM for a better AM. At the Joseph A. Bank Easter sale, save up to 60% on almost everything. With all Traveler sport coats $149, all dress shirts including Traveler 2 for $89, and an extra 40% off all clearance. Only at Joseph A. Bank.
The road can change in an instant. But with lightning-fast shifts and dynamic track-tuned suspension, what the road demands, the GS delivers. Experience high performance through high technology in the Lexus GS 350 and GS Turbo. Experience amazing.
Listen up, heart disease. You too, unnecessary ER visits. And hey, unmanaged depression. Don't get too comfortable. We're talking to you, cost inefficiencies and data without insights. And fragmented care. Stop getting in the way of patient recovery and pay attention. Every single one of you is on our list. For those who won't rest until the world is healthier, neither will we. Optum, how well gets done.
If we may find a city where one was considered impossible to exist, it may well write a whole new chapter in human history.
We must turn back. There is no turning back.
Critics are raving. The Lost City of Z is an instant classic, profound and staggering as anything seen in years. 5 stars. The Lost City of Z, rated PG-13, now playing in New York and LA.
There are those who panic when the market makes a move. But if you're like us, you know that focus and the drive to do more will take
North Korea, and today, which is April 15th there right now, North Korea is celebrating the birthday of his grandfather, Kim Il-sung. It is Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, and the 4th of July all rolled into one, and traditionally, it's the day on which the North Korean government makes bellicose noises and tests missiles. What makes this year different is the Trump administration has announced that another missile test, another nuclear test in that country will occasion a response of some kind from the United States. And the result is more tension on the Korean Peninsula than in the lifetime of anyone watching this, most likely, unless you were around during the war there, which ended in 1953. And so we are following this closely. Experts are saying that this is a real flashpoint. There is peril here for real. It is not hype. We'll be following that story, of course, through the night and through the weekend. Well, back to news here in America. James Flanagan operates a construction company, and President Trump's massive border wall was a project too big to resist bidding on, so he did. He submitted a wall pitch that has some remarkable features: lasers, anti-tunnel technology, a surface that cuts your hands when you try and climb it, and more. It is a remarkable work of art. But now his company is being threatened. San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, all big cities in California, all threatening to blacklist him merely for bidding on a federal project. James Flanagan joins us tonight to explain what exactly has happened. Mr. Flanagan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So first, just quickly, did I characterize your wall correctly and all the features that it has? It doesn't sound like any wall I've ever seen.
Well, sure. Actually, all the credit goes to Charles Russillo, who is the designer, the architect, and a brilliant engineer. And he approached me not too long ago to really, it's an honor and humbling to be the one to hopefully build this wall, because it's better than any concrete or any wall that anyone has ever seen. And it is. It basically, any problem that anyone can really come up with to penetrate this wall, we have a system to basically combat that.
So the wall looks like it leans a little bit. In what direction and why?
Right. Well, it would lean south towards Mexico at a 30-degree angle. And really what this does, it makes it much more difficult to climb. You can kind of picture it as like a rock climber climbing at an inverted type cliff. It's not a straight vertical wall. And then on top of that, it has a serrated face, which basically would cut your hands apart if you did try to climb this wall. There's sensors all over it, below it, and basically if anyone even gets near it or tries to penetrate it in any way, the governing authorities would know right away via computer system. Each wall panel has a serial number, and as soon as one of these sensors picked up any type of activity, a computer system would read that and basically the authorities could respond accordingly.
I think that qualifies as a big, beautiful wall, not coining the phrase, merely repeating it. So is this something that you're building because it's a job, or do you want to build this? Do you have an ideological attachment to it? Do you think it's necessary?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that. I believe in this wall. I mean, one more thing that I want to say, there's no concrete involved with this wall. This is a composite material. This is something that no one's ever seen. It has ballistic capabilities. It has blast capabilities. It's very light. It's 10 times lighter, or 10 times lighter than concrete, or I'm sorry, 100 times lighter than concrete, and 10 times stronger. It has a 5,000 per square inch compression strength.
Wow.
It's amazing stuff, and it'll go up faster, it'll go up cheaper, and it's going to take months, not years to do, and it can employ thousands of people. But back to your question, I think this wall is basically the foundation of really the Trump movement and the American movement to put our country first. Yeah. It is so important, and I can't stress that enough. And so, yeah, it's a business decision for me. It'd be an excellent opportunity. It's something I'd love to do and be a part of, because it's really, I'm looking at it as being a part of history. And then, there's a personal part of it that, I support our president 100%. I support his agenda. And I think we need this wall to basically save our country. At this point, we're in a lot of trouble, and we need to control our border. And this is one way we can do it.
Well, I can tell by your accent you're a native Californian, so I guess you would know. So tell me about the response that you're getting from these three cities, Berkeley, Oakland, and is it L.A., threatening to blacklist you. What does that mean exactly if you were blacklisted by those cities?
Well, what it means is that they would boycott or blacklist you from doing any contracts with those cities, and probably eventually the whole state of California. I mean, that's where I really see this going. It's really disturbing. If I was going to describe it in one word, I'd call it tyranny. I don't think it's legal. And what's really strange about it are these are companies that are in the Bay Area. It's not just construction companies, they're tech companies. All kinds of different types of businesses and business owners with employees. And these are people who probably voted for these politicians. So it's kind of really the first thing or incidents that I've seen where they're hurting their own people on their side. I mean, as far as the left goes, are Democrats and who really don't want to see this wall go up, or really hate anything that our president wants to do. And so it's disturbing, and it's kind of unique in that way. So I'm hoping the folks that are these business owners and the people that work for them, it's kind of a wake-up call, and kind of see that, I don't think these politicians really care about us. I don't think they have our best interests at heart. And I think they're all just drunk on money and power, and that's all they care about. And really, I would challenge them to call me, and I'll go to their house, and I'll remove their fence or their walls for them, and see how they would like it to live without a fence or a wall, or with a gate on their front door, or with a lock on their door. I challenge that, and I'll do it for free.
I like your style. James, thanks for joining us. Good luck out there.
Thank you, Tucker.
Tonight. Thanks. Now on to a very important story. A doctor in Detroit has been arrested and is charged with running a female genital mutilation racket. Hate even to say that, but it happened. Dr. Jumana Nargwala, she's a South Asian immigrant to this country, and she works primarily as an emergency room physician. She's now accused of committing the procedure on girls 6 to 8 years old. The children apparently were brought from around the country by their parents, hard to believe, but to be mutilated. Now, the practice of mutilating girls in this way for non-medical reasons has been banned in this country for 21 years, but the practice is still widespread in other parts of the world, universal in some places in Africa, and it's considered morally obligatory by some Muslims. Now, these communities plant their roots in America. Supply apparently is rising to meet demand, which is exploding. According to the CDC, more than 500,000 girls are now at risk of this. That's a figure that's quadrupled in the past 20 years amid steadily rising immigration levels from those parts of the world. And yet, oddly, stopping this practice, which again is real, isn't a major concern for American feminist organizations, nowhere near the top of their list. You can check. You'd think stopping actual violence against women would be a bigger priority than, say, stamping out catcalling or sending women into combat, but it's not. Maybe they'd care more if the Duke lacrosse team were accused of doing this. I bet they would. Well, up next, the conclusion of our week-long series on opioids. What's the path forward for the millions of addicts living in this country and suffering? Plus, Facebook has taken up the mantle of helping its users find and defeat what they're calling fake news, because we know you can trust a vast tech corporation that is hoarding all your personal data. Definitely trust them. Is that the strangest story of the day, or can we find something even stranger to top it? That contest will continue, and finally, we'll continue to monitor what is becoming breaking news out of North Korea, that country's dictator threatening a nuclear test on the anniversary of his grandfather's birth. You're looking live now at the North Korean government rally. We're going to be monitoring this for as long as it takes. We'll be back in a minute. We spent the last week talking about the opioid epidemic in this country, its unprecedented scope, its terrible death toll, its government-fueled origins, and the suffering, the amazing and horrible suffering it has caused. Today we conclude our series, Drugged, with a look at the addicts themselves and the tough journey back to sobriety. This is what the opioid crisis looks like in America. A driver and a passenger slumped over in a Ford Explorer. In the back seat, the driver's 4-year-old grandson waiting for someone to show up and help. The adults in the car had overdosed on heroin. That grotesque scene played out last September in East Liverpool, Ohio, but it could have been anywhere in this country. About 2.5 million Americans are now addicted to opioids, and that number is rising so fast that public health officials can barely keep up. Between 1999 and 2015, the number of deadly overdoses nationally rose from a little over 8,000 to 33,000 a year. That's a higher death rate than any war we've fought since World War II. In nearly all of those cases, prescription drugs were the root cause. Fully 80% of heroin addicts say they first got hooked on drugs prescribed by a doctor. At first, opioid-based drugs do their job. They kill pain. And for that reason, they're a blessing to cancer patients, the terminally ill, and people recovering from serious surgery. For generations, opioids were prescribed sparingly, with the knowledge that long-term use could lead to addiction and death. That began to change in the 1990s, thanks in large part to lobbying by drug companies hoping to spike their profits. The result? A massive increase in opioid prescriptions from doctors and a huge infusion of narcotics into communities across the country. It is now common, for example, for patients to receive opioids after having their wisdom teeth removed. A recent study found that the majority of those pills go unused by the patient after surgery. The effect of this? 100 million tablets of synthetic heroin in circulation in American neighborhoods. And that's just from wisdom teeth extractions. Multiply that by countless knee surgeries and back injuries and diagnoses of chronic pain, and you'll begin to understand the scope of this problem, and how it leads ultimately back to the crushingly sad tableau playing out in the front seat of that Ford Explorer in East Liverpool, Ohio. The driver of the vehicle was trying to get to a hospital after realizing his companion had overdosed. When paramedics arrived at the scene, they were able to administer the anti-opiate drug Narcan, though by that time her body had started to turn blue from lack of oxygen. She survived. Will she ever recover? If she's like many heroin addicts, she won't. She'll keep using and keep overdosing until one day she won't come back. She'll leave a family, maybe children, and they may too become addicts. The cycle will continue until someday someone in charge decides enough and addresses this horror at its source. Jeff is a recovering opioid addict, and he reached out to us after this series' first segment earlier this week. He joins us tonight live. Jeff, I should say that you're one of a lot of people who emailed the show this week during the series, but I thought your email was really powerful and moving, actually. So explain why you emailed initially. You became addicted to opiates after a car accident?
Yes, that's correct. In 2006, I was in a car accident, which led to a back injury, 3 herniated discs, pinched sciatic nerve. I went to my family orthopedic with the MRI of the injury. He gave me hydrocodone. And within the first 2 years with physical therapy, going to him, I went and saw surgeons, and they all referred me to pain management. Now, pain management are anesthesiologists who give out opioids, and I don't think they know what the long-term effects are, because within 8 years I was on crazy amounts of medication that keeps escalating and kept escalating. Thank God I never went to heroin, but it was still a long journey. And yeah, right now I'm on methadone trying to get off, but my back pain, so it's been a little slower than I would like. And yeah, the medical professionals that they really don't have the training I believe they need to do what they're doing. The pain management system is flawed, definitely.
So you've been on opioids for 10 years. How has it affected your life? The goals that you had, your relationships with other people, what's it been like?
At first, for the first 6.5, 7 years, fine. Never got out of control, but what they don't tell you is when you take opioids, your tolerance to pain decreases, but your tolerance to the medication increases. There's no backwards tolerance. So you keep building and building and building till you need more and more and more, up until the point where there is no more. They won't give you more. So I've done rehabs, 30-day programs, been clean for 60 days, 3 months. Back was killing me, took the lowest dose of oxycodone I could, and within a month my tolerance was back to where it was. They didn't give me any information that oxycodone is synthetic heroin.
So you didn't know it was addictive going in when you were first prescribed?
No, it was a trusted family orthopedic. I went to, for him as a teenager for a knee injury. I didn't get opioids, but he helped me with a knee injury, so I trusted him.
Oh, what's it like when you go off it, when you don't have it?
Oh, it's the worst thing in the world. You feel like bugs are crawling out of you. You can't get comfortable, can't sleep. And it's like a 10 to 14 day process. So the 30-day rehabs do about 4 days of Suboxone, which is a way to get off of it.
Yes.
And that didn't work because of my injury, so now I'm currently on methadone, slowly tapering down. I've been on that for 2 years.
So knowing what you know now, what would you have done after getting in the car accident 10 years ago?
Did a little research on my behalf. I'm not playing a victim here. I have some, but these doctors hand out these medications and don't say what they really are.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew. And I think government, pharmaceutical companies, and doctors need to give you a pamphlet, make you go to a class to have knowledge. I am a libertarian with this. I don't think they should be banned or anything like that, but they should give you knowledge, and they should give you sparing doses to take emergency use only. That's how I feel, because if you're only getting it, say, 5 times a week, people who are addicted, the doctors will be able to pick up quickly because they'll be trying to get in earlier and earlier each month. And they give you opioids for 24/7.
Right.
And because go ahead.
We're almost out of time, but I just want to know, do you think you'll ever get off the opioids?
I do not know. I honestly do not know at this point. I'm on methadone, which is a treatment program.
Yeah, I know.
So that's an opioid as well, but
I know.
I'm slowly getting down, dealing with the pain, and trying to find other alternatives to help with the pain. And I don't know. I honestly don't know at this point.
What a sad story. Jeff, I really appreciate your coming on and the note that you wrote us. Thank you.
No problem.
We're rooting for you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
We've had an overwhelming response to this series, and we know the opioid crisis is an important story to you, and we're committed to covering it continuously, and we will. Up next, the editors of Wellesley College's newspaper say it's a good thing to hate people you disagree with. That's pretty extreme, but is it the most extreme story of the day? We've got a panel to tell us. All right, we're going to try this again because it's fun. It's our Top This segment. We've got 2 panelists. Each is going to bring the most ludicrous story of the day. We're going to pick which actually is the most absurd. This evening, joining us, Catherine Lyons. She's managing editor at Famous DC. Bree Payton is a reporter for The Federalist. I'm glad you both came. Catherine, first to you.
Thanks for having us. So I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a war on fake news.
Okay.
All right. And so there's good news, and that's Facebook is working to combat it. But the bad news is it's relying on us, the users, to determine what's fake news. So we're going to go scroll through our news feeds. We're going to find a story. And if we don't like it, we have the ability to report it and say, hey, this is false.
Ooh. But do we know what the criteria are they're using?
So there's
what's
tips.
fake and what's real?
There's tips. If you spot a story and you're not certain about the URL, you want to look at the formatting, the pictures used. It asks you if you think that this is a joke, and I'm like, well, Facebook, I want you to tell me if it's a joke or not. So,
in other words, MSNBC users will be able to decide what's real and what's fake.
Yes, anybody.
Whoa. Okay.
All the
You're leading so far, but we have not heard from you yet, Bree.
Yeah. So students at Hillary Clinton's alma mater, Wellesley College, have penned an editorial basically saying that hostility is warranted to be used against those who say things that are politically incorrect and or offensive. So ironically, this editorial was actually in response to criticisms that these students were too weak and wimpy and feeble-minded after a group of professors tried to block a controversial speaker from speaking on campus because they were afraid that too many students would be emotionally harmed by this speaker.
So their argument was we have free speech as long as we like it.
So actually their argument went as far to say that free speech is only for certain groups of disadvantaged students and that not anyone can say whatever they want. That's not free speech, according to students at Hillary Clinton's alma mater.
Unbelievable. Boy, those are two really good stories, and both of them are about speech, I would say. I'm horrified by both, but yours a little bit more for a less obvious reason. Facebook has more power than Wellesley. I guess that's a problem. And until they're undone by an antitrust suit we're all begging for, the idea that like a pressure campaign could declare news fake when it's not, and there's nothing we can do about it. You never see it on your Facebook feed. Kind of ominous.
Right. I'm already deleting friend statuses. I don't need to delete anything else. I won't have a news feed.
That's a really good point. Bree, we're giving you a participation trophy anyway, just in the spirit of the times. But you know what? It's a great one.
It is.
Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for
Happy
having me.
Friday. We'll be right back.